Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
And you just rep the heck out of it, especially if you're seeing a team where, like, in 23, we faced about 4 or 5 teams in that 15-game season that were using them all in short yardage, third and short, and then also in the red zone and goal line. So our kids just naturally continued to recognize it week after week after week and got better at it. And then we got to this year where it wasn't an issue because now you had an entire year to really, truly master it.
Welcome back to another episode of the Alert the Post podcast. Today's guest is Kalus Murphy. He is the safeties coach at North Central College, right down the road from me here. So we represent locally. Kalus, how you doing today?
Awesome. Doing awesome. Excited. It's just really cool listening to these all the time and now getting a chance to do one.
Of course. Well, we've met a couple of times and, you've gotten the whiteboard and kind of shown me some different stuff. And I'm like, wow, this guy would be an awesome guest to have on, talk about his different experiences and insight into one of the best football programs in the country at North Central. For the listener that may not know, North Central is a Division III powerhouse that's, correct me if I'm wrong, won multiple national championships within the last 5 years. How many are we talking at this point?
Yeah, so 3 in 5 years. So 2019, 2022, and 24. I've been a part of the 22 and 24 team, but then 5 straight. So like appearances. So 19 through 24, we've gone to every single Alonzo Stagg Bowl, which has been really cool.
Yeah, North Central, watching peripherally over the years, they obviously have a lot of talent, but they're well coached on both sides of the ball. So they're a great staff to learn from. So we'll jump right into this. So your guys' base defense, where do you guys start that first week camp with installing your defense?
In terms of the actual install, it's more so based off of kind of what, the head guy wants to do with their offensive install. But then we install everything that we'll need for that certain personnel grouping. So like day 1 is typically 10 personnel, and we're going to install all our cover 4, 10 personnel variations, all our cover 3, 10 personnel variations, all our cover 2, all our cover 1, 10 personnel variations, and then kind of go from there. So on day 1, all the kids are pretty much getting is just, hey, this is what our base 10 personnel fronts are. This is our base 10 personnel back 7 coverage calls. Some of the 10 personnel stunts in there too, but it's very, very vanilla. And then each day goes then to, hey, now it's 11 personnel, but strictly like your 20 PY off. Then it's 11 personnel inline. Then it gets to 12 personnel with wing sets and like maybe one guy off the ball, and 12 personnel sets where you now have like a true 7-man surface. And we kind of keep building from there. In terms of the actual base of the defense, it is a true 4-2-5 overfront base defense where we are very multiple in the coverage on the back end, but it's a single gap system. So that makes life really, really easy. So we don't have to tell the kids, hey, we're running cover 3 now, but now we're 2 gapping here or there. It's like everyone knows where they fit in the defense based on whatever coverage we call. And that makes life really, really easy because then the goal is to have it where we're trying to make an offense play left-handed and really take away their top 5 or 6 concepts in the run and the pass game to then force them to, essentially create a new offensive identity by the time they get to the second quarter because nothing in the first quarter is working. Their fastball is gone. And so that's simply kind of what we are. It's a lot of stress on the freshmen when they're new to it, but then you get to like week 4 or 5 and those freshmen get it. And then they understand, hey, we just have a really, really big toolkit. And then week to week, we kind of then adapt ourselves to our opponent.
Yeah, as an offensive guy, that's insanely frustrating. If you take away the 4 or 5 best things that I do, I'm searching, right? And then even during the week, if I know that you're going to do that, now I got to come up with a whole new game plan and we can't run what we're good at. So that is insanely annoying and frustrating from the other side of the ball.
As a former offensive guy, being on this side of it, it's a whole lot of fun. It's like, oh yeah, you're not going to run counter on us this week. You got to get to something else. It's a lot of fun. It's a whole lot of fun.
There you go. I know you coach safeties now, but I'm sure you've got your hand in a lot of the different, basically everything on the secondary side of it. So when you guys are looking for skill sets to play corner or safety, what specific skill sets for each of those spots are you looking for?
We're traditionally a field boundary team. So what that allows us to do is we can then kind of specify our guys to where, hey, our field corner and field safety are typically more of like your rangier, more athletic guys. Those guys can also, especially at the Division III level, they can be a little bit more so on the smaller side, but they're excellent in space versus then to the boundary. Typically, that's where you're going to have a kid with a little bit more length with our boundary safety and our boundary corner. That's a kid where it's like, hey, our boundary safety typically has to be a primary fitter, very similar to our nickel to the field, where in our defense, that's in a perfect world, like an all-star Sam Backer. But we've kind of gotten the last 2 years to personnelling it to where maybe sometimes it's a third corner and sometimes it can end up being a true extra outside linebacker if we get into like true 4-3 fits versus 12 personnel or 21 personnel. That's really cool. But the top 3 things in terms of what we look for on the back end with the corners and safeties is you have to be an elite player on the perimeter in terms of block destruction, but then also leveraging the football and getting it back to the rest of the defense. And then the one thing that we're a big non-negotiable about here, and that's something our young guys are going to learn pretty soon here in August, is relentless with pursuit. If you're the field corner, it gets ran to the boundary, you have to haul yourself all the way over there. And if you don't have those 3 qualities, you won't play in this defense. But when you then have 4 guys on the back end that have those 3 qualities, it becomes extremely exciting. You get to situations like in Mount Union where selfishly our weak safety is beating our will linebacker to the play because he's just that excited. And then I think other things to really look into is you typically want your boundary corner to be your best cover guy, because in our system, we're leaving that guy on an island. And then we have instances where we can strong rotate away from him. And essentially, he's responsible for 1/3 of the field. And then really more so on the safety end, hip mobility is extremely important, especially for that field safety, because there are a lot of the times he's going to end up being your deep middle of the field close player. And it's like, hey, now you're 25 to 30 or 35 yards away from the quarterback. And hey, can you confidently come from a back pedal reading the shoulders of the quarterback, being like, hey, is he hitting this over route or is he going to essentially hit this post route over top of me? And then can I be able to spin out of that? So those are things that we kind of look at. But most importantly, it's those 3 factors. Can they tackle on the open field? Can they win on the perimeter and block destruction? And then they're like relentless with pursuit. If they can do those 3 things, that's not even talking about like, typically DBs get the whole, can they catch the ball thing? If they can do those 3 things, they can play defense for us.
Nice. Outstanding. So even as an offensive coach, I'm always looking for, like everyday drills, like especially like on our side of the ball, it's ball security, right? There's only so many ways you can do it. And the creative ones get the kids excited. So on the defensive side, obviously it's tackling. So what's your favorite tackling circuit drill that you're doing right now?
Yeah, so we really redefined ourselves. Coach Durking, who's our defensive coordinator, Shane Durking, he's the man, alum of the school, was actually a part of the first team that almost had an opportunity to play for a national title back in 2013. Lost to Mount Union in a 1-point game in the snow in the semifinals, but then came back and it actually was the defensive coordinator in 2019 for that national title. We redefined ourselves after the 23 season and just said, we're going to be the best tackling defense in the country. So we take our tackling circuit extremely serious. And something that we developed, really, Coach Wood, our special teams coordinator, he's also our corners coach and our academic coordinator. He's a man, also another alum. We do this thing called a redirect tackle, where essentially you take one of those lovely D-line hoops and you can put it on the sideline, and they start on one end of the hoop. And they're essentially going to run like a semicircle around that hoop. And you're then going to set up a donut or an agile. We typically have a donut wheel for it, though. That's about 5 to 7 yards away from the hoop. And when that kid is running around and essentially getting all his hips pointed in the other direction, you then roll the wheel either against him, forcing him then to plant his foot, get flat, and redirect back, and then make a roll tackle on the wheel, or you then roll it to where he's going, and he just continues on his track. And what that's really done for us is a lot of times you're going to have a ball carrier change directions on the fly, and guys are already committing one way, pursuing that near hit, and then quickly have to get their hips back open to redirect. So to make sure our guys aren't slipping and sliding, we're prepping them for the worst case scenario when what happens, you're tracking a ball carrier and all of a sudden he totally beelines in the other direction. And it's been really successful for us. We do it with our defensive linemen. They just start in a 3-point stance when they do it. We do it with our linebackers. We do it with our DBs because it's applicable to all of them. Especially like for the defensive line, it's like, hey, your boundary defensive end is like your cut back boot reverse player. And he's now working down that line, and all of a sudden it's like, oh crap, it's boot. It's the same thing, him now flipping his hips and getting flat, and now just leveraging that quarterback on a boot. So that's something that we've really, really enjoyed, and we're going to keep doing it because it keeps working for us.
An awesome drill, and I'm going to have you send me a video example of it. If you don't have
Most
any players doing it, I expect to get you on the field, so you can send me this, and then I'll tweet this out with it, so anybody who's listening can just jump on my Twitter, and then they can see a video of it, because that's a pretty sweet drill. What's the hardest offense that you've had to prep for in the last couple of years, and what made it the hardest?
I think overall, there are two things that now with offenses are really, really tough is your 11 guys, where it's like, hey, a team can sit in 11 personnel with an all-star tight end and an all-star running back and can get into 10 personnel formations, 11 personnel formations, 20 PY off stuff, and then can kind of delve a little bit into 12 personnel if that back is pretty talented as well. But then also those other teams, those 11P teams are like your LSU from 2019, your 2020 Alabama team, and then like your 2022 Philadelphia Eagles team. But then even like what San Francisco's done for a litany of years with Kyle Shanahan with the 21 personnel groups, where it's like Deebo Samuels is technically a receiver, but then he can get into the backfield with Kittle and McCaffrey, and he can do a bunch of things himself. And then they can go from their typical 12 personnel forms to 21P forms to 20P forms back to 11 personnel forms. That's extremely tough because when you're a defensive mind, a defensive coordinator trying to decide what your front's going to be, what your stunt or pressure is going to be, and what coverage is going to be, and you don't know what the picture is going to look like after you make your call and then get to a litany of formations, you don't want to screw over your defense. That's extremely difficult. I think some of the closest things that we've experienced in terms of opponents is, you don't want to tip your cap too many times to Mount Union, but this past year, what Mount Union was doing with their three talented running backs, where they were essentially truly in a 21P form, sometimes if their tight end was there, but they were also sometimes in like this 30P form, where they have three backs back there, and they could essentially be into about 4 or 5 different backfield sets with all of those backs aligned in different alignments where, hey, sometimes there are wings on the edge of the tackles. Sometimes now they're right next to the quarterback with the back pistol. Sometimes it's 2 of them to one side like it's a go-go offense, and then the other kids then on the other side. And then they're doing entirely different things. It's bash counter. It's true triple option. It's like inside zone slice. It's duo slice. And then they're running like the coolest way, I think, to run counter, where you have the 2 wings together and they're your pullers, your kick out and your puller, and then everyone else is just down blocking. They were doing all of that within really only using 2 or 3 different players, and they could get to that like that. And that was just extremely difficult to prepare for. So kind of for offensive minds, if you can find a way to get your best athletes on the field and then see how many different things you can cleanly do with them, it's really, really hard for a defense to prep for.
As you're describing that Mount Union offense, in my head, I'm thinking you just sent out the bat signal to Dan Casey. Now, Dan Casey's going to have to research Mount Union, and we're going to see a bunch of clips on his Twitter feed. So, Dan, if you're listening, if not, I'll send this to you. You need to research some Mount Union because it sounds like they're doing some pretty good stuff.
Cliff Kingsbury built an impressive system for rookie Jaden Daniels to thrive in this past season. When I put on a couple of their games over the winter, I decided that I had to do a manual on them. The Washington Commanders were one of the top offenses in the NFL last year, propelled by an impressive rushing attack. They utilized almost every concept in the playbook, using tags and weekly adjustments to keep defenses guessing all year. They incorporated RPOs to complement their run game where it made sense. In the past game, they focused on finding matchups for Daniels to exploit, both down the field and with quick hitters. Cliff and company did a great job of finding concepts for the defenses they were playing to get the ball out of Daniels' hands at the top of his drop. One of my favorite sections to work on was the section on tunnel screens, watching all the different variations that Cliff and company designed and how Washington executed them throughout the season were a lot of fun to study. Tunnel screens are a great way to get receivers the ball in space for easy touches in the pass game. You can find my entire book, my 300-page full complete offensive manual on Amazon by searching the 2024 Washington Commanders Complete Offensive Manual.
So I know when we're talking about the run game, right? You come in with a game plan, different things are happening, but at some point you might say you're getting run on a little bit. You got to fix what you've been doing. What are some simple fixes that you like in the run game?
Yeah, so I've really been now 4 years going on the defense side of the ball, and oh my goodness, my eyes have been open because something really unique we had this year, a very unique resource is we had a coach on the staff, Matt Foster. He's an old timer, so he doesn't really love getting shout out. He doesn't want all the attention, but he was the head coach of the College of DuPage here in Illinois. And was actually inducted in 2023 JUCO Hall of Fame, the NGCAA Hall of Fame, and he is a stud. So he's Coach Durking's mentor. He slowly became my mentor this year, and he came in and helped us in our third round in the playoffs, where we played Springfield College, which was a true triple option attack. And not many teams are seeing true triple option anymore. And with that, he's played it for years. And what he was kind of teaching us was what's going to happen in this game is traditionally you get increased in the run game and immediately think, okay, I got to change something schematically. And instead, what he was preaching is like, hey, if something doesn't work within these first 3 series, trust your scheme, trust what you prep for all week. It might truly end up being a technique thing. So then starting with that, the first thing I would always say is your simple run game fix is see on film or relay back with the kid to see if it's a technique issue, right? Hey, maybe you had them in the right front, but the kid didn't wreck or he didn't spill this, and that was the issue. He's not getting underneath the puller and spilling it out to speed. And then if that's not the issue, I think the next thing to do is to alternate the front first before we start about changing coverage, before we start about moving people, before we start about bringing true blitz coverage and pressure. Changing the front, it could be something as simple as, hey, we don't need to play our defensive end in a 9 anymore because what they're truly doing is they're running counter, they're trying to kick them out, and they're trying to get downhill right away. So we need to get that kid more so in a 6 or a 6I, or some of the older folk may still call it a 7, to get that kid more tightly aligned so he can truly get underneath and spill this thing. Or it's like, hey, our 3 tech can't move. So he's losing and he's getting reached as a 3 technique versus outside zone and wide zone. Maybe it's, hey, we got to cheat him to a 4I and just over cheat that front. Or, hey, we're now getting a true honest tendency. So instead of playing double G's or double 2Is or double 2s, we can now truly get to an overshade front and now truly shade to where they're going. Activating those tackles to where that 3 tech to the strong side has leverage, but then that backside tackle can actually have leverage across the center's face. So I think that's the next step. So you go from seeing if it's a technique issue to then a front issue to then the next step I then truly believe is then fixing it with coverage. Where, hey, Cody Alexander does a really good job explaining this, and this makes perfect sense to me, where when you're talking about coverage, you're talking about spacing. So in quarters, you're getting to essentially a 9-man spacing where there are 9 available players of your 11 players on defense that can truly be like wired into the fit. Then you have cover 3, where it's a middle of the field closed coverage. So now you have a safety that's now out of the fit, and that now leaves you 8 players that truly can be wired into the fit. And then you have like cover 2, where now you're pulling typically that safety into the boundary out of the fit because he has a half field player. But let's say now those corners who are technically in the fit, those are more like collision funnel sink guys. So they're not really in the fit. So now you're truly playing with 7-man spacing. It might be then, hey, a scenario where you have to be like, hey, we got to get to 8-man, or hey, we got to get to 9-man. Typically for us, like 2 years ago, it was like, hey, we're playing UW lacrosse and they're running quarterback bash counter. It's like, we got to get to 9-man spacing, get as many people in the fit as we can. And then after that, even then you're getting outgunned like that, and that's now like a physical problem. Then you start talking about movements, games, stunts, like talking about pinching the front, talking about, hey, something I really like right now is like you get outside zone one way and you can run an ET stunt to it, to the strong side of outside zone, where now that end spikes B gap and that tackle's just flat wrap. And you're either going to kill the outside zone and feed it back to the defense or force that back to bounce out to the tackle, which is really, really cool. Or, hey, now you're getting inside zone and you can run a tech stunt where now the tackle on the front side hits the inside hit of the play side tackle, and then the end wraps back inside to then where essentially the back's getting fed to right there. And then obviously then you have true like blitz coverage where you're truly gapping everything out. But I think that's essentially the best procedure to find your simple run gate fixes without compromising your defense. What are the simple things you can do in those first 2 stages of technique and with simple front changes before you start doing things you've never done before or using things that you're not really good at? And I think that's the best way to do it.
No, that's an awesome answer, man. Like, it's a stepwise process, right? Like you said, you don't want to compromise your defense immediately by getting to some of the more wild answers. You can start as simple as with technique. I love the way you framed that. Something that I've studied, the McVay Shanahan guys have been doing, running their 5-step stuff from bunches for years. The last couple of years, especially this past year with the Vikings and what I've studied with Kevin O'Connell, is they're masters of what I call cluster formation. So they're like these dirty bunches. So they're like not true bunches, but they're not spread out. But what it does for the offense is we can get to our different release patterns, right? We could spray or stem either way, and we can create picks or rubs. We're close enough where we can still do that, where you guys aren't necessarily checking to man right away if you don't want to play man, or checking out of a man if you don't want to play zone, rather. How do you guys handle those? What are some of your favorite ways to handle bunches and clusters?
Yeah, the first thing is identifying the 3 main ways teams are doing them now. Is first typical way that I see is you'll have a wing set with 2 tight ends and then the backs align there, right? The next way you typically see it is, hey, now you have a nasty split receiver with now an off the ball like tight end, and then the backs also align there too. That one's really tough because there's no one you can really press. Technically, the Y is the point, but he's off the ball and he can slice and he can move, so that makes it really tough. And then the third way I've seen a lot of teams do it recently, and they're running like duo out of this, is you have essentially a snug set receivers that are then extremely tight to the tackle, and then there's an off the ball tight end that's then in a hip alignment to that tackle as well, and then that creates that true bunch. So I think what we've kind of found ways to do is, first of all, teaching your players how to identify those and then giving them tools how to solve it. And so like a very simple way for whether you're coaching, boys club football, high school football, and you don't get as much time with the kids, is finding ways to essentially get to cover 2, right? And the reason I think that's really important is because with cover 2, where you now have a flat presence, you now have a curl player, and you have a half field player, with all the bunch schemes that are being made, where some teams are creating those clusters to truly run the ball and out leverage you, you now immediately have a force presence there, typically that corner to that side, that has leveraged everything to eventually box everything back into the rest of the defense. And then you can change the tempo of the safety, where you're teaching him he's a half field player, but he can play it almost flat footed and get a clean run pass key. And now he's essentially going to become your very late alley player. So it's like, hey, we're technically playing cover 2, but you're getting back into like that 8-man or 9-man spacing if he reads it correctly. But then also, if they're passing the football, you can then make it easy for then those players to be like, hey, that flat player is the first out player. That half field player is the first vert player. That next inside, that well backer is the next in player. And they just state their jobs right away once they recognize that cluster bunch. It's like, hey, I'm in, hey, I'm out, hey, I'm vert. And I think that's a really easy way to handle it. And then you don't have to get discouraged if you're in man coverage as well. You can get to those same rules with man coverage too, where now they just use their tools and essentially get to that, hey, I'm the first out player, I'm the first in player, I'm the first vert player. And they just read those routes on the fly. And that's something that we've been doing. So it's like, say we want to call a 6-man pressure, and now we're truly in cover 0, where we only have 5 guys left to cover, and they get into those bunches. Our kids just make a call, essentially, or like a tool call, and immediately now everyone understands, even though we're all playing man coverage here, because it's a fake bunch now, I have to take the first out, I have to take the first in, I have to take the first vert. And you just rep the heck out of it, especially if you're seeing a team where like, in 23, we faced about 4 or 5 teams in that 15-game season that were using them all in short yardage, third and short, and then also in the red zone and goal line. So our kids just naturally continued to recognize it week after week after week and got better at it. And then we got to this year where it wasn't an issue because now you had an entire year to really, truly master it. And then if you want to truly stay in man coverage, I think the next thing to truly look at is if a team is trying to run the ball, you can't press against nasty sets. You have to leverage the football. And with rules where a kid's maybe 4x3 outside of it all. Because what you don't want is when they're all nasty, typically that first receiver is going to try and go crack the end or go crack the will or just move immediately up to the safety. And if you're just locked in a press alignment on that nasty split, he'll never have vision and he'll just go chase. And now you get a very clean 2-for-1, which I know all you offensive guys love. So it's like, if you're going to live in man coverage, then you got to give your kids rules on how to properly leverage themselves to the formation if a team's truly still trying to run the ball. But other than that, yeah, it's that cluster stuff is a whole lot of fun. It's really, really cool. I remember going to like the AFCA and finding a book on it and just falling in love with all that stuff. But those are the unique things. But I think the easiest way is you got to get to like a cover 2 to make sure you have flat presence and a real force player. and then you just in and out and everything. It's really easy.
Yeah, when you were describing that cover 2 adjustment, like especially for the run game, in my head, I'm like, all right, how can I play action the heck out of this thing now? I'm working on those as you were talking there. Last question, man. I appreciate these answers. This is awesome. And even for offensive guys listening, like I've been learning a ton just listening to you talk. So the last question I have for you is, you like studying different defenses? I know you were kind of studying, when we met a month or two ago, you were studying Texas's defense. Maybe talk about one defense that you've been studying, college or pro game that you found some interesting stuff or anything that you want to share.
Yeah, so for the longest, I was a really big fan of Vic Fangio. So, it seems like he's the theme of the week right now, given they've just won the Super Bowl. But studying Texas was a lot of fun this year because, obviously, Vic Fangio is 2 high shell, quarter, half majority, but they get to some 3 high stuff. Get to some true, cover 3 rotational things just from depth. That's the same thing like Brandon Staley was doing the same thing. What was really cool about Texas is they don't blitz really ever in base choice down and first and second down. They will only play their true middle field close team on base downs. And that was really cool to see where their mindset, at least appears to me after studying really from game 1 to I believe truly game 14 or 15, they're trying to get their best tacklers to or closest to the ball every single play in their base downs. And their best tacklers were their front 4, their weak side safety, and then their 2 inside linebackers. So what you seem to find when you study them is they're a very big weak rotation cover 3 team. And even when they end up getting 3-by-1 attached to the field, where everybody else probably in the country thinks, okay, cover 3 teams will now try and rotate coverage to that. Instead, what they'll do, most important thing is just getting those best tacklers there, is they just bump everyone down, where now that weak side safety will still rotate weak to that and now just essentially become and replace the will backer's job. And the will backer now bumps to where the mic would typically be. And then the mic is now apexed out there. It's really, really interesting, but that's what they do. And I think the biggest lesson I kind of learned from that, seeing a scheme where it's much different than us, we're a 2 high scheme majority of the time, is do what you do and live in your world. And especially on base and choice downs, you can get really creative on third down. And that's something if you guys if defensive minds want to study, watching Texas on third down, where they really just got extremely creative, it's super fun to see. But on base downs, they kept it really simple. And that then allowed them to easily solve problems throughout games, just running their base defense and keeping their best players exactly where they want them to be. And then when they faced teams that tried to expose that cover 3 variations, what they ended up doing was, hey, it's still weak rotation cover 3, and weak rotation cover 3 is very similar to quarters, where you can end up in a scenario where, hey, to the boundary, if the back's aligned there, you can turn it into just true, traditional spot drop zone cover 3, and then still play match cover 3 to the field. And that was really cool to see, because that's very similar to when you watch, your Fangio stuff, where on one side of the field, they're playing cover 2, and then to the other side of the field, they're playing match quarters. And that was really creative. It also just allowed those guys to, hey, these are how we're solving problems in our world. We don't need to change coverage. We don't need to create something new. This is what we do. And that was really awesome. And then I think that they're just another reminder as well, last thing, that when you are bigger and athletic at the defensive tackle position at any level, it makes life a whole lot easier for everybody else. Michigan showed it for a handful of years. Alabama has shown that for a handful of years. Their 2 defensive tackles, while they weren't exceptional pass rushers, on first and second down, you can't move them. They're eating up gaps, and it allows those backers to truly get creative and roll free, which then helps that boundary safety who's fitting from depth to roam free. Really, really neat things, and just definitely things to think about that, while a lot of things change, most things stay the same. And when you're big athletic in those spots, it makes life real hard for the offense and real easy for the defense.
If the listener wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to do so?
Really, the best way is on Twitter. It's just my name. So it's at Kalus_Murphy. And then the true name is just Coach Murphy. So just reach out on Twitter. I'm not verified or anything like that. So you can DM me right away. Being the recruiting coordinator here at North Central, I get DMs upon DMs of future high school football players that want to be collegiate football players. And I reach out all the time, and I'm always checking that. So if you ever want to talk ball, I'm a nut for it. I'm obsessive about it. Just reach out right there, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Some stuff, man. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Alert the Post on the Coach and Coordinator Network. If you want more Alert the Post content, check me out on X at B_Peters12. Or for more long-form content, check out my Substack at alertthepost.com. There you'll find weekly articles, sections from my books, full complete season breakdowns, and at least once a week, I post a full season cut-up for subscribers on alertthepost.com.